Sawadee and hello. Welcome to Radio Nong Kwai, broadcasting from Doi Hua Ma Nong Luang. We hope you enjoy today's scheduled programming. อย่าลืมเข้าป่ากันนะจ๊ะ
Should I just do my intro?
Do, please. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay. Many millenniums ago, when our comrades first hoisted sails and wandered the boundless and fecund forests, there existed an ancient truth which today has been concealed. This concealment is a global conspiracy with key players in the highest levels of power throughout the past several thousands of years, one that reaches down into the lives of not just every human, but every biological being on this planet. We are but visitors on this rock, tethered to a burning sphere by an invisible force in an unfathomable universe. This, most of us take for granted, while refusing to believe these forces have any more effect on us than a butterfly beating its wings halfway around the world. The ancient truth in question is not one of ancient aliens, or of great seafaring kingdoms led by high castes of priest kings, as so many agents of deception would have you believe. No. The truth is that we, our ancestors, once achieved full communism on Earth some 10,000 years ago. The truth is out there, buried under countless centuries of sediment, earth, stone, and deception. Archaeological evidence, botanical evidence, and even still living, breathing human evidence of that past. And that, dear listeners, is what we hope to somewhat unearth today. Or at least that's what our guest says. Hi, Marcus. Did I get that about right?
That was eerily on point. Yeah. Very good. Wow, fantastic. Nice.
You know, if you ever need a ghostwriter for your show, just hit me up.
Yeah, like we've been watching The Count of Monte Cristo together, right? And you remember I told you that most likely Alexander Dumas didn't write that by himself because it was like serialized for a newspaper in Paris. And the first time I read it was I got a version from my grandfather, and it was a good copy because like it would say in the notes, right, like, oh, now he speaks Spanish, but like 200 pages earlier he didn't know how to speak Spanish. It's like really sly commentator, but at the same time like very revealing. So I'm confident that that those rumors are true, and then we could do something like that. And I think it wasn't even frowned upon because already at this time, I can't remember, is he writing, it's sort of 1870s, right? Like 1860s, I would imagine. I think the first real meeting, of like, what's it called? What we call today, like intellectual property rights, took place.
Oh, the Geneva one, yeah.
Yeah, like 1890, I think is the first formal one that actually made decisions. And it was interesting because like the Dutch, as always, like scammers as they are, they would just like, any like author in Europe, they would just like, copy it because there were no property rights, and then just resell it.
They had the printing presses as well, right?
Yeah. And so they would just mass produce like pirated copies, like like the way you would burn like DVDs. You used to see them 10, 20 years ago in Asia. That was like the entire publishing economy of Holland. That's ridiculous. And like 100 years earlier, they were also like infamous for like, you could become a doctor at a Dutch university like after 2 weeks or something. It was basically just buying a paper, right? So,
well, I still live in Thailand, which is still the land of knockoffs in many regards, so I could just make my own version of Return of the Repressed and except like it's like Bart Simpson and it's got like a blue t-shirt instead of an orange one.
And it's called Barnaby. Barnaby Simpson.
It's called Barnaby. Return of the Repressive. I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so just for our listeners, I don't know how many listeners from which side we've got right now, but just I suppose for the DinDeng listeners, Marcus is from a podcast called Return of the Repressed. Maybe you should introduce yourself a little bit.
Yeah, sure. I think you did you did really capture it quite well. At least what I've been doing now for the last 2 months or so, and then maybe half a year of research that has been like running in the back of my head.
And also when the first generation of that series as well.
That's right. Yeah, which is maybe a year ago now, quite exactly. I think that's what I tried to time it as, or maybe a little bit longer. Which has been, like you described it, right? Like an endeavor to reclaim this sort of impossible past from the right-wing grifters, right? So trying to... Well, actually, I did prove that like Ancient Aliens is actually like... That was like a Soviet invasion, right? Initially.
The TV show?
No, yeah, I mean, like,
the concept.
The concept of the communist, or the Soviet word was much better. What was it? Like paleo contact, I think.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and and then like it was taken over by like a Nazi ghostwriter who used to write for the
that's
it's not
right.
called the Volksblatt, but the something like that, like the official newspaper of the NSDAP, and I don't know, like I think I'm only mentioning that because that is sort of the most famous right now. Sometimes it goes under the name of like LAHT is the abbreviation, so Lost Ancient High Technology, right? Which is sort of I think Graham Hancock, for example, makes a pretty distinct, like he makes an effort to distinguish himself from the Ancient Aliens crowd, and focusing more on that sort of like lost ancient high technology. But it's at the end of the day, you know, it's the same tropes. And I think if you actually like just take away the alien part or the lost ancient high technology, what you end up with is a sort of like a pretty bog standard, like bourgeois history reading, right?
Yes.
There's like really not much new to it. Like they were already, and I've thought about making a follow-up. I suggested that in like one of my last episodes to do like a follow-up on this sort of areo-heroic trend towards the end of the 1800s of like, you know, they're not even satisfied with like the Aryan heritage anymore. By the time that they start to like, you know, grouping themselves into secret societies who all want to claim lineage back to the Crusaders, they just don't know how to stop. And so the Aryan myth merges with the myth of original secret societies, right? And this is like what in German and Swedish anthropology at the time is called like Männerförbund, or secret men's band. I think I've seen it translated it in English. And and it's like a common trend there is to go back to like Mitra and the Iranian like I don't really know, like these functionaries that would have surrounded the kings of Persia before the Hellenistic period. Can I briefly
pause you, which is, as you can hear, listeners, this is a deeply brain-poisoned individual. But so what Marcus is currently describing, just so it's clear, is that basically you've been tackling ancient history on kind of two fronts.
Yeah.
One of them is kind of looking at either the bourgeois history or the kind of more woo-woo ancient aliens bourgeois ancient history, we could say.
Right. Yeah.
And then we'll get to there was full communism in the past bit in a minute. But yeah, just a little clarity. Do go on. You were talking about some kind of group of Iranian.
I mean, this is like, I think, you know, like it is impossible to sound sane talking about these things because you have to, you know, you have to sort of take Nazi, pseudo history serious to such a degree that at least there's some kind of like grain of logic, which quickly is impossible. Like just read the first address that Himmler has to the SS when he is trying to lay this out, and it's like it's pure insanity. Like he's suggesting, you know, that well, actually, like the Zoroastrians were like the first Bolshevik hunters, and like you know, like that Judaism and Bolshevism is like a combined enemy that has existed, you know, for millennia, and that is like, you know, I mean, all this stuff is just, I think, like almost like phantasmagoria on a level that it's not even maybe really relevant. I think what I really want to do is to show that when sort of mainstream archaeology, or like there is no really such a thing, but let's say bourgeois archaeology of the biblical tradition that dominated the 1900s, so you know the next century, a lot of the assumption, and that is why I suggested, you know, that contemporary alternative history has a lot in common with the 1800s, is because also the official archaeology also assumed many similar things for the majority of the 1900s when they were in power. So like biblically inspired archaeology is another one of these.
They took the Bible as gospel. I mean,
right, they did, very much so, and they've dominated like especially then West Asian archaeology, which is sort of like the archaeology that has like triumphed, or at least like of early prehistory and early history. I think anything that is found in West Asia is just, we just assume that those are the trends that existed everywhere else in the world. And of course, everybody knows that, you know, it is common knowledge that civilization began over there as well, which is also becoming like more and more like maybe not so like, you know, like it's really a matter of definition. And it doesn't seem like it's the good things that begin over there. It's rather like, the gnarly things start there. So I think, and then, I feel like that's what I've been getting up to recently. And I don't know, like, because today...
But I mean, conversely, I think, however, you are trying to paint a different, or take a different approach and paint a different picture to the one you just described in your own investigations, and also leaning at times quite heavily on that of like Graeber and Wengro and what's his name? The British one, Heyerdahl, of course, and Faulkner. He's
a very interesting Marxist archaeologist. And I think like via him, and also sort of trying to, you know, look who are the good guys in archaeology, also made me realize like how many trends there are in archaeology. That's why I like didn't want to say mainstream archaeology, because that's sort of how the alternative archaeology people try to frame it, right? They're always saying like as if there is this big archaeology. There is, to a certain degree there is, which was like biblical archaeology, but that sort of collapsed in the 90s, where like even some of the biggest representatives of what used to be biblical archaeology up until that point, which would get all the funding, which would be like, you know, in bed with Mossad to look where they wanted to look in old Bible land and so on,
and destroy what they wanted to destroy.
Exactly. Like that whole project seemed to be sort of I mean, like one of the biggest American profiles of the biggest institute of biblical archaeology, I think it's called like American Biblical Archaeology or something like that. He basically declared defeat in the 90s, which was
that's right.
That was very amusing to me to read, and I also felt I didn't really know what to feel about that, because usually my enemies don't declare defeat. When I go after them in my podcast series, and I don't know, like that also made it more apparent like how many different traditions of archaeology there is, and like there's Marxist archaeology, there's processual archaeology, there's post-processual archaeology, there's the biblical archaeology, and now these are mainly Western academic dominated, fields. I'm sure that there are many nuances, though maybe not as many as we would wish in other parts of the world, because again they're often trained in association with like the academic dominance of maybe foremost Cambridge, for example, is very like the agricultural fundamentalism of Cambridge University is one which I've dealt with before, which has been a very strong, especially like where we are looking perhaps today, right? Like in Southeast Asia, for example, with the out of Taiwan model, because there's some really interesting gaps in the like. So we wanted to. Well, we have an interview coming up, right? You and me with an Indonesian author who is in prison, and if you look at like then, for example, like Indonesian history, there are like these amazing gaps in like just the general timeline of Indonesia. Like first off, you have like fuck off, go to sleep. That's insane old dates of like the Java Man and the Flores, like the hobbits, right? Which are like millions of years old.
Yeah. These are like very, very ancient remains, right? Which have been found.
Yeah. And like I think like so if my estimates are correct that biblical archaeology failed sometime in the 90s, what we see like in the last 20 years is like a lot of interesting new material coming out. So like for example in relation to the Flores man, which are these hobbits, right? Like it's not really derogatory, right? Because like it's just that they're very small.
They're very short. They're very little guys.
Yeah, right. And they're not anatomically modern humans as far as like the reasoning goes right now. But like we still, humans, I think is because I think it's exactly what this proves. Because they have like a head of a chimpanzee, right? And they found tools which are maybe as old as 1.5 million years. I'm just looking up in my, not on any text right now, but like on my wall, trying to remember this. But
okay, as I said, brain poisoning.
Yes, yeah. And but I'm pretty sure you'll find that those are the rough estimates right now.
Yeah,
and. What they've concluded, the archaeologists, is that like these are some of the earliest suggestions of seafaring that we know of, and which like that should blow everyone's mind, right? Like 1.5 million year old, boat building by brains that are as big as a chimpanzee. Like all these fucking, what we grew up with these pictures of like. The bigger the brain, the better, like or more symmetric the bone tool or the stone tool, right? And then these specific industries that's obviously are made to match. I'm sure there is an overlap in the archaeological record as well. They're not making it all up, but that to have like these stone tools as the one engine of history and then match it together. You need to have
this little cuboid of the brain to be able to use
right?
a stone tool.
Which is clearly like a phrenological assumption of like old archaeology just lingering on. And they're just like combining what is essentially like a Marxist reading, right, of like the means of production, but then they can't be all Marxist. So even though like Marxism has had an influence, a great influence on archaeology, like for example like ideas of the Neolithic revolution and things like that, like comes from Marxist archaeologists. They have to combine it with then. Like this pseudo-economic base, which is just a phrenological measurement of the makers of the tools.
Yeah.
And I think like these hobbits like disprove that. Unless, these tools could also be from like, the Java Man wasn't a hobbit, right? Like he's an Homo erectus. But those are, Homo erectus is also not an anatomically modern human, right? So it also, puts this into a lot of like interesting space, I think, for us, because.
Well, I think also just generally there's also like gaping, genuine eons of time where nothing is accounted for in a sense as well.
Yeah, I think then because if let's assume somebody made a boat between 1.5 and 1 million years ago and managed to get to certain islands of. What is today Indonesia, like Java and Flores is sort of on the same strait, right? Like it's a little bit further down southeast of Java, isn't it? And then I think the assumption is that anatomically modern humans only came there about 50,000 years ago, which was and again here it's like another problem because it's supposed to be only one out of Africa. Oh well, this will be out of Africa 2 because it's the anatomically modern humans, whereas the early ones are of out of Africa 1. But even this out of Africa 2 has archaeological problems. It's only really backed up by like hardcore genetic evidence, whereas you have indication that anatomically modern humans, have been outside of Africa in waves rather than in like one big, we're all like one big family.
March.
Yeah, exactly, like one exodus or whatever. And so, but then, and then there's another gap. Like, so if we think that like somewhat comprehensible prehistory starts over here in Southeast Asia 50,000 years ago, then there's another huge gap there, because then it's assumed that the Austronesians came from Taiwan about 2000 BC, right? And that everybody who lives in this area today are descended from them, and that is and that's like once again like the Cambridge analysis of like agricultural fundamentalism, that they expanded because they needed more land for their agriculture, and then then again now recently they've done like testing and seen that like, but they aren't the same chickens.
Completely debunked.
And they aren't the same pigs, and like it's everything is just becoming like more and more complex, which is maybe also why like alternative history is like on a comeback now, when like since the 90s onwards, when biblical archaeology fell, we see all this like new age archaeology taking its place, but it's inspired by very like religious assumptions, right? And often very patriarchal assumptions, and
often assumptions, and also assumptions quite often when people have various political projects that they're trying to pursue. So like a good example is Ataturk's one. I remember sending that to you a while back, when Ataturk was like, no, Turkish was obviously the original language of the human race, and you just happened to realize that at the moment that you were building the modern Turkish state. Okay, that's crazy, but cool.
Even though like his ethnographers said like, but we've been like working on this Central Asian hypothesis for a long time now,
right? And
maybe we should like fund that. And it's like no, like that's never gonna come back to us. I'm not giving money to some Afghanis. Like I want to have this project for myself. And I think like another, like in Indonesia, I talked about it already, because I find it interesting, like the Gunung Padang situation, right? Like you see a lot of like politics.
The new capital
city. Is it?
No,
I was thinking that old pyramid.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm really bad with my Bahasa names. Right. Yeah. So those pyramids, which people tried to make the connections, you see that kind of like ancient alien style meme, where you'll have like the pyramid in Mexico, the pyramid in Indonesia, and then the ones in Egypt and Sudan. Yeah.
And there has been like, I don't know, like it's hard to get a grip on that place, because of course it attracts, Hancock had it in his Netflix series, and it's been attracting like, the wrong kind of people for so long that it's difficult to see, what it's about. And it's also, I don't know, like this is another thing, like there's a lot of like pyramid-like structures that haven't been excavated here in Japan, for example. And it's not because they don't want, they want to hide stuff, which is what, the Hancock crowd claims, but it's because, like what you were saying, before, like how much like the Judeo-Christian archaeology destroyed things in West Asia that can never be excavated again, for example. The tools they had 100 years ago were very rudimentary. Like the Acropolis, right? Like in Athens, we don't have any shards, like pottery shards left from that time, because they just discarded it, and they've excavated everything down to the bedrock. And like I can understand why, like maybe there is also a theory in Japan, for example, with the keyhole mounds that are here, that they're pretty certain that like what they're gonna find is that the oldest kings of Japan were Korean, and there is like certain Japanese incentives not to find that out, like on paper. So there, again, there is this dialectic of, for sure, even like official archaeology has certain political ambitions, and so do the alternative then archaeology. as well. And like, I don't know, Gunung Padang seems to be one of these battlegrounds in the middle of this. Because, like, I mean, as we've suggested, there are a lot of gaps in Southeast Asian history, but still the earliest, signs of presence go so far back that you gotta wonder, like, what were these gaps filled with? So, no, but it's...
I mean, well, that's your 26-minute answer to, could you introduce yourself?
Now we've been introduced.
But yeah, so what now you've been introduced. I think yeah, maybe the DinDeng audience have got a little taste. If you want more, there's like a good, I don't even know how many hours, like your episodes as well are like 2 hour long.
At least, yeah. There
so
are like 3
where that
hours.
came from.
Yeah, there is. Hopefully
So
in a more
the
coherent fashion.
Yeah, so the reason the reason I brought Marcus on today, more specifically, so to speak, is because as well, which I alluded to in the intro there, which is because as well as this kind of physical archaeological things that we can touch and hold in our hands, there is also evidence of still living, breathing human beings who still live in social formations which give us some indication of the... Did you use the term early communism, or what term do you like to use?
Because I didn't want to say like proto-communism, because I think even Marx didn't always use that. I've seen like texts where he says indigenous communism, for example.
I don't hate that as well, to be honest.
Yeah, indigenous communism is quite nice. And early communism is just like, it's a bit... it doesn't really... Because proto suggests that it's like prototypical, and it couldn't be full communism then. That they're just waiting for something... else later, but obviously they didn't have those notions, so they weren't prototypical to anything according to themselves.
Well, let's just call it full communism then. Why not?
Yeah, why not?
I think so. I suppose my point of interest, or even point of reference here, is, as listeners and readers will know, well, there's two kind of arms of it for me personally. One is the kind of Zomia world, which I have my own doubts about and my own questions about, but I have an awful lot of experiences in. Just for those who might not be aware, Zomia is an academic term given to the region of upland Southeast Asia, most famously by James C. Scott in The Art of Not Being Governed. And in that book, and generally Zomia scholars make this argument that upland Southeast Asia, and this is to say the very mountainous midi-Himalayan region, which kind of stretches from Vietnam all the way to kind of Nepal, was and some say still is a kind of refuge space where people avoided, or communities, social groups fled to avoid state capture or market capture.
It's like a massif,
depending on how you want to frame it.
It's like
yes.
Like if you have like the Himalayan massif, right, that everyone is much more famous, like that covers Tibet and northern India and like you said, Nepal and Bhutan, and then like gradually that becomes the Southeast Asian massif, but which also like includes, I mean, actually maybe in terms of like land area and population, most people will find themselves in China, right? Like Yunnan, Guizhou, Guangxi, like those southwestern parts of China. But then,
given
of course,
the recent urbanization of that bit of China, but I think historically, maybe, it's a good question. You'd have to kind of draw up some maps, and I mean, don't have a great deal of interest in doing that. But yeah, Yunnan for sure is a huge component of that. And also where I live right now,
right.
And this is my most hated word. The term hill tribe comes into it. This is often what people will kind of casually be aware of this term, but Zomia scholars kind of argue that the hill tribes, and they won't use that term obviously, they'll use the term mountain people or forest livers, or I don't know, whatever term you want to use. Subaltern. Fuck, what does Scott say? I literally got the book here. Like,
I can't
I
remember
got it
what
off
he
my bookshelf
says, but
just
like
before.
Zomia is, I remember, but
Zomians, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
But the argument is that these people.
Like that they escaped things like corvée labor. They escaped, the wetland rice cultivation, like as insofar that it was. Yeah, exactly. That insofar that it was taxated.
So I suppose what I'm saying then in this context is that perhaps looking at some of these social groupings that still exist today can give us a glimpse into the past of what Marcus has been talking about on his series. That's on one arm. On the other arm is a far, far, far smaller case study, which is that of the Maniq, which I've talked about in a previous episode on this podcast. I haven't written about them so much, but I'm currently translating a book about them into English. The Maniq are it's so beautiful as well. You saw the pictures, right?
I didn't see the pictures,
Lovely.
but you painted a very good picture of them. No, I don't think did you send them to me or?
Maybe, I don't remember. But
yeah, I don't think
anyway.
so. But it sounds amazing, and I can understand what you were saying. That you like the reasons that you had for like not wanting to write about them, because it's so precious almost that it's like anything would feel like perverted of to try to summarize.
So that's a line I'm gonna have to walk again today. So just in brief, the Maniq people are certainly the last remaining truly nomadic, let's use the term gatherer hunter people left on the mainland of Eurasia. So that's quite a vast area. And they are in the deep south of Thailand, predominantly in Satun province and Patalung province and Trang a little bit. There's very, very few left remaining, about 200 people as far as I'm aware. And not only am I translating this book, but I've also spent some time, not a lot of time, living with them. I can't claim to be an expert, but I have my experiences. So in a sense,
probably more than most.
Yeah, I guess. So in a sense, Marcus and I just kind of wanted to compare notes to some degree, and see what we can kind of correlate to that end. I mean, this the reason, sorry, I was just going to say, the reason, as you alluded to there before, that I have been quite hesitant to talk about the Maniq people is because where I live now in the Zomia region, there are genuine existing real life human zoos for the, again, ugly word that I don't like, the long neck Karen people, Gali and Koyao, and who are refugees. You people know what that means, right? The long neck Karen people.
With the necklaces, right?
With the hoops. So those some there are villages in Thailand where those people are given refugee status and they're not allowed to leave the village. Buses of tourists are brought into the village, and the women who do this neck extension procedure, I don't know what to call it, when they put the rings on the neck to make the neck longer, they are very much encouraged to keep doing that practice.
I see.
So I would definitely call that a human zoo. And that is something which I really fear happening to the Maniq, which is why I'm very hesitant to kind of talk too much about them, because people really don't know about them, which is kind of a blessing in many ways. And I guess that could bring us on to the kind of flight response that you and I were talking about this morning, was it, or yesterday?
Both, I think.
Yeah, so I suppose maybe let's talk about the counter first. So I mean, you've been talking about the great example that you gave in your series, which I love very much, in terms of how these kind of let's say full communist ancient communities would have responded to the encroachment or the capture of class society. You described, I mean, maybe you just tell it, the Viking response, the Celtic response, however you want to describe it. And then conversely, I can talk about the kind of flight response, which we can see with the Maniq and the Zomia type people.
Yeah, so exactly. So like I think like what Neil Faulkner emphasizes, if we assume that about 3000 BC, these class societies started to appear in different parts of the world, like primarily initially like in West Asia, but we can't really be sure anymore, like that, you know, there's even indication, right? Like for example, the Mayan calendar starts around exactly that time, right? And there are some indications that there was maybe a hub of like civilizational dispersion from Ecuador, I think, right now. And there are similar, like, you know, ideas about certain places in Laos and Cambodia, etc., etc. But like, let's say, like, if we have that as a like a sort of general threshold, that around 3000 BC, these what will become like the Bronze Empires eventually, they start to appear in their prototypical form, and class society is born. Now, class society doesn't really have anything to offer people, really. Like, it doesn't. It seems like it really must have been a quite brutal endovar. Now, still though, like, why by the time that it sort of gains momentum, it might seem like a good idea to engage, you know, to be on their good side, right? And so, like, the one of example
once you've got a large band of raiders coming to your community type situation.
Yeah, then it, like, you can't convince them simply by the fact that your way of life is better. Like, you know, oh, we haven't had famine for 1,000 years here. You seem to have them every 10 years. A band of raiders with the right kind of weapons, they're not going to be persuaded by that. They're going to save themselves for, you know, the next coming 6 months by stealing all your stockpiled food, and maybe steal your people as.
I was going to say that. I mean, that was one of the points that they didn't really have stockpiles per se.
Yeah.
Or particularly big ones anyway.
So they would steal them mainly as
steal labor
as
rather
labor
than steal stockpiles. Yeah,
exactly.
Or women as
right. And so, like, so the one example that I had of this sort of conformism is apparent, like, in Scandinavia, because like, if you know, like, your Roman history, it's quite famous that, like, Scandinavia was never really, like, conquered, right? Like, same, like, maybe the northern parts of Scotland, right? Like, with the Picts as well. And then, like, you know, some of the Baltic states, of course, as well. And like, I mean, it's hard to say really, like, what the Romans conquered, but that tends to be like a common notion. But like, by the time that these, like, Bronze Age trade routes are adopted, we do see, like, Bronze Age, like, pre-Viking chieftains in Scandinavia, like, making copper and bronze coins of themselves in, like, Roman style, and putting, you know, alphabet, like, letters of the alphabet on the coins, but they don't really make any words, or they don't make any sense, because they didn't know.
Have an alphabet.
Yeah, they didn't know that those were, like, you know, the names of the emperor or whatever. They thought they were decoration, and it's you know, I use this as a, because they would really want to.
Did they even have, like, a monetary system? Was
I don't think so. No.
Market,
I think it's,
so to speak.
Yeah,
so it was purely ornamental.
Yeah. It's a similar thing. I think, like, in Japan, for example, like, in these really old mounds, for, like, a long time, I think it's, like, until the like, Fergal Schmudak is gonna kill me now, but, like, I think it's, like, the Heian period that, like, you really start to see some circulation of coins. And up until then in Japan, it's like coins were there. You had, like, you know, boatloads of just coins coming into Japan, but it was just for, like, ornamental reasons, to, like, get yourself buried with Chinese imperial coins, because like the afterlife, maybe there are bigger Chinese emperors in the afterlife. So similar assumption, I guess, among the Scandinavian chieftains that, wow, maybe there's a bigger Roman Empire in the afterlife. Gotta come prepared.
And so the Scandinavian chieftains were buried with the coins, right?
Yeah, you see that.
Right.
And you do see like, the early copper trade, but would seem to be like just more bullions, right, of copper and bronze being traded. And you also see mercenaries joining, the Roman army, like trying to go like on a adventure in the early days of their life, adult life. But then I'm sure they got paid in like real coins. Yeah, and this is, I mean, I use this as an example to show like how pathetic this period is. That it's like so, because always, and this is really like, I think a dominant feature, like in both like British archaeology and Scandinavian archaeology, that they always focus on the ornaments of the Bronze Age to try to show that, now culture is really starting, and then anything that is like before that is just people, smudging themselves in excrement and wearing like a reindeer head.
And desperately trying not to die.
Yeah. And that is like their religion and their cultural expression. But what we actually see is that, like, I mean, already like, 13,000 years ago, like around the time of Göbekli Tepe, there were like, massive industries of ornamental objects, and they seem much more personalized and like, I don't know, just genuine is the only word I can think of. Like, it looks much more authentic when you look at the way that they would, change, like tattoo themselves and use
almost more artisanal. I don't like how the word artisanal has kind of been usurped, but
but right, like it's more like a craft thing. I know what you mean. Like with the craft beer and everything, now it's all been like capitalism is sort of including its own negation as a selling point. Like, this is not industrially mass produced. Buy more of it. Like, but how did you make so much of it? But you can see that like mass production then is already taking place in the Bronze Age, and they're imitating other people, and there is no
and
like.
Also, no, go on. Sorry.
I know those are the basic features of a culture industry, right? Like that there isn't a genuine cultural expression. You are just there exists a value structure that they are trying to imitate, and that becomes the art. And my theory then, and this is based on a famous female, like a woman, like documentary director in Sweden, who started off her career by like looking into the Celts, right? And her conclusion, and she does the same thing as me. She says that, of course, the Celtic heritage can be very useful, like as it has been in Ireland, to defend against Anglo-Saxon historical, claims.
Imperialism.
To their lands and to their culture and to their language, etc. But it can also work as it does in Austria, which is like, I think the FDP, is it like the Freiheit, like not like the Alternative for Deutschland, but like for Austria. I can't. It's called something like that, right? Like FDP.
Yeah, I don't know the name of the party, but it's a contemporary Austrian kind of far right party, no? Yeah, they also because they can't say Aryan and things like that anymore, right. So they say Celts, right? And the thing is that there are very much Celtic quote unquote discoveries there, just like there are in Scotland and Ireland and other places of Europe. And her conclusion is basically that there never really existed like a Celtic people, but by the time that like the Germanic tribes had been so like confronted with the Romans, like over the centuries after like Gaius Julius Caesar's conquests, when I think that already under Gaius, like before he died, he already started to introduce chieftains to the Roman Senate. Like that was one of his big
like one of his
chieftains
big
from
moves.
the periphery of the empire,
which was really like, you know, frowned upon by the old oligarchy of like Pompeius and Cicero's followers, and later Brutus's followers as well, because they were all old aristocrats, right? Like Gaius Julius Caesar is like somewhat of a self-made man, let's say, in comparison, relatively speaking. And he wasn't a slave, right? Like as in Gladiator or whatever. But and so like by the time that these you know, Teutons or Germanic or Gallic chieftains had become, you know, had served a period as senators in Rome, she's saying that, you know, surely by the time that they returned back home, they must have felt like, well, one, they're all defined by the Romans, right? Like the earliest papers we have of them, like in Germanicus by Tacitus, right? Like it's the writer or something, you know, who talks about them and gives them names. And they must have also started to adopt this sort of perception that the other has of them as their own. And then also they must have been, you know, convinced by the lure of the culture industry to be more, you know, to industrialize culture in a different way, to sort of make it more standardized and so on. And that is the
Well, are we just talking about
expression.
culture, or are we talking about kind of social structures as well?
Yeah, well, it comes with it, right? I think is what she's saying, as well. Like, I mean, surely they would have had druids, priests, or, you know, a religious personnel as well. But we don't see, you know, patriarchal inheritance laws among the, when they were indigenous communists, like before the Roman conquering. And then I would, you know, if we associate indigenous communism with a more authentic artistic expression, where you are really like, you are making art because that is what a non-alienated human subject does, right? Then by the time that they start to become alienated and start to become like incorporated into the trade networks of the Roman Empire, the politics of the Roman Empire, the cultural expression of the Roman Empire, which has a space for them, a symbolic space, you are the Gauls, you are these tribes, you know, that we've written stories about. Please identify as such, you know, because and then
it's an exonymification of, I suppose,
the what?
Exonymification, maybe,
what
if we could say. Like an exonym is, you know, like when a word, a name for something used by outsiders is given to them. So, for example, the word, there's some argument about this, but some argue that the word Thai originally means slave in the Khmer language.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you see that a lot, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's like Berber
so
and Barbar and
yeah. So in a sense, I mean, you can just say that the Romans kind of, in a way, kind of wrote the history, or wrote the, how to say, existential meaning of these kind of, I'm using the word subaltern here, of these kind of subaltern groups, so as to define them, right? And then that came to define them, rather.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's very much like her theory. And then she shows like how what we know as like Celtic art, like all these artistic quirks that when we see them, we think, oh, that looks Celtic. Like they were actually not so much a separate people, but a sort of collective artistic expression by all these separate Germanic tribes and peoples who had started to become, as you say, now I forget already the word, but like
exonymified, whatever.
Yeah. And that is where we get those things from. So that is one way of not escaping the grain state, right? And then we wanted to look maybe at the other.
But I mean, they still end up getting absorbed into the grain state nonetheless, right? Through this process.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean.
Like they kind of, I mean,
that's
maybe
one way of not escaping.
Yeah. And as you say, it's kind of the most pathetic kind of attempt. As well as being the most unsuccessful.
Sad, really. Yeah, because I mean, especially with those coins, right? Because like often the coins would depict them being slaves. Like that's a pretty common feature of Roman coins. To have like a picture of a Roman emperor standing on top of a Germanic chieftain, for example, and I'm sure they must have seen that. So, but such is the way of the pyramid of class society. I guess.
I suppose I don't know. Can we give that a name? Can we give that kind of process a name? I don't like the one I came up with.
I just said not escaping the grain state, right? Like they are really captured by the grain state in a soft power and like hard power fashion. I don't know what. Maybe we will come up with something.
Sure. Okay. I mean, we could just call it state capture, which is the term that Scott uses. But I think with people like Scott and Graeber to a large degree as well, I think they do put an awful lot of emphasis, or the word state does a lot of heavy lifting for them. Because oftentimes when we talk about the loss of those indigenous communists, if we talk about the loss of those societies, I don't think they were necessarily lost to the state per se, to the formation of states per se. They could be lost to, how to say, I mean, just because something grows grain, does that make it a state? You know, I'm not entirely convinced of that. Yeah, I
think we should I guess what their problem is that they're not very versed in Marxist theory. I think they are, but they like to make a point about like not being Marxists.
Right.
And so I don't know. When I think about it, I often think of like the state as in Althusser's ideological state apparatuses, and so that you have the RSA and the ISA at least, like so an ideological state apparatus and a repressive state apparatus, and the ideological state apparatus has many like subdivisions, or like it's separated into many various ideological state apparatuses. And I think what's important to know is that at least that is Althusser's thesis, that like you don't need always the repressive state apparatus. You don't need a Roman soldier to stand there and tell them to copy these coins. They're doing it out of their own free will because they don't know any better, and that means that they've already been captured by the ideological state apparatus before anybody held a sword to their throat, which is like you say, what is the reason for you planting these corns or these seeds?
Well, so I suppose maybe a better word than state or class society, if we want to use, maybe class society is a better word than state, or even we could use a word if we follow that kind of the more kind of agricultural approach that you're taking in your research at the moment. We could use the term plantation, or captured by the plantation, or captured by a class society rather than captured by the state, because as you said, I'm not entirely convinced of that term.
I think that's the question also, right? Like I mean, if you're only captured by the ideological state apparatus, like if the superstructure holds a certain autonomy, which means that these chieftains who copied these coins, yes, it's a pathetic move, but at the end of the day, they grew their grain for themselves. They didn't have to pay anything to the Roman Empire. It was sort of like on their terms to a certain extent.
For a time, at least.
For a time. But I don't know which one is worse. Like, that your heaven is somebody else's, or that your earth is somebody else's. It's difficult.
So if that's one means of failed avoided capture, the other one, which we mentioned earlier, is of course the flight response, which Scott talks about so much in his work. But I kind of see it a bit. I see it very, very clearly with the Mani people. It's much more apparent in that. I mean, for starters, they have their own language, Mani language, and in the Mani language, they make there's a distinction, which is a us and them distinction, which is Mani, which is us. It literally means us. And there's Hami, which is them. And their definition of us and them is not what they look like, per se. It's not what they look like at all. It's not what language they speak. It's whether or not you live in the forest, truly live in the forest or not. So, for example, they will say, because they've been studied by they've met international anthropologists before, and these anthropologists have shown them pictures of similar groups in the Amazon or in Africa, and the Mani people have said, "Oh yeah, those are Mani. Those are us, right?" Like they recognize that. Whereas you,
cool,
Marcus, you're Hami for sure. I'm Hami. The Thai person that lives in a plantation house right beside them is also
Next
Hami.
Yeah.
Like there's no, that's a distinction, right? So I think, it was really, when I first met them, like it was so evident that there is this flight response. Historically, they've always been under threat from mostly slavers, again, stealing labor, as like the kind of earliest form of capture. And then still today, they're under threat by, shithead Thai National Park wardens chasing them off, or, they're actually Thai
settlers.
The local settlers. Also you've got to think, like, if you're a gatherer, a hunter, and you come across a field of bananas in the forest, come on, man, that's bananas. Like, who's to say that this is some plantation owner that moved in 5 years ago? Who's to say that that's that guy's bananas? So they get in trouble.
Yeah, that even happens in Taiwan a lot, because there's a lot of like abandoned plantations. So like a lot of like the Aborigines of Taiwan says that that's sort of public property. We have a law for that in Sweden, like you're allowed to pick any mushroom and blueberries and berries, like it's not like the forest, even if it's owned by a person.
Really?
I think it's
nice.
You're allowed to go there and make camp and things like that.
And then they just bring a bunch of Thai people in to do it for them. Anyway.
That's what happens. Yes, correct.
So when I first met them, like they were very, very, very wary of me, and I was introduced to them by one of the few anthropologists that's actually spent really significant time with them, and can speak their language. And even then, like, it took several days of warming up, and I heard stories, like, and I've read stories about, people will know where a Mani camp is because they'll usually rotate location. So they'll probably stay in one place for a week, maybe 2 weeks, and then they'll rotate and go somewhere else, maybe 10, 15, 20, 30 kilometers away, whatever. And they'll just vanish. Yeah. Like you won't find them. If they don't want, if they're not willing to be found, like you will lose a group of 30 people in the forest. And so this, I think, is got to be it is so bizarre. I'm just thinking, like, they live within it's remote, but it's still only like a 6-hour drive from your nearest like mega mall in Thailand. Like it is incredible that they have survived for such a long period of time. And just briefly on not briefly maybe, on their social formations. So I this book, here's a book that I'm translating, by the way.
Oh yeah. I think maybe, did you send? No, I don't think this is the one you sent.
Maybe it was a different one. So this book is more of like a how-to guide, how to live as Mani. It doesn't talk so much about the social relations, like you can see, right? Like it more identifies the kind of foodstuffs and crafting that they do. Hold on.
and the blow gun.
Yeah, the blow dart.
talked about.
Yeah. The blow dart hunting, which is very rare, by the way. Like they're so famous in Thailand for being like blow dart hunters, but they seldomly use the blow dart. It's like that thing I think you were talking about in an episode, which is why I use the term gatherer hunter rather than hunter gatherer, because there's far more gathering involved than there is hunting involved.
Yeah. That seems to be the case.
Yeah. Also, like
the evidence is piling up for it.
The flower that they use to produce, because it's a poison-tipped dart, and the flower that they use is incredibly rare and hard to find. So, like, you're not gonna, how to say, you don't have much ammo.
Step on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I can see that.
Yeah. So socially speaking, in terms of like any kind of social hierarchical structures, from what I saw and from what I was told, I couldn't really see any. I did see a somewhat gendered division of labor, but not all that much, So the way that the groups work is typically you'll have a group of 20 to 30 Mani people, and there'll be a speaker of the group, and the speaker of the group is a person who communicates with the Hamid, with the outsiders.
The outsider.
Yeah, and so talking about gendered labor, typically that speaker is a woman for whatever reason.
You said the one you met, he was the first one in like...
He was the first one in living memory.
Living memory time memorial. Yeah,
to be a man and be the speaker of the group.
I'm thinking like I would really would have wished to be there. Like I lived in the jungle, which is not so far away. I mean, they don't really respect borders, right? Like that's one of their what we would consider their trait, but which becomes a problem to the governments of Malaysia and Thailand here at the border, right? I don't know. I didn't meet any Mani people, but like there's like the Orang Asli, right? Like in Malaysia, who would sometime come and visit the place where I lived in the jungle. Though I think, well, the guy I lived with for the longest time, like 9 months, he was, I think he was half like Orang Asli and half Malay.
Right.
I don't know. I thought like one thing was interesting that like most of the people who gathered there, like from the local villages, if they would like trek up and they didn't want to live in the village, and the people who lived permanently in the jungle, it seemed like when we were hanging out and talking, like most of them had like more affinity with the Kelantan state, which is the northeastern state of Malaysia, rather than Malaysia as a country. Like they seem to be like, some people would have like a Kelantan flag on their t-shirt or something.
Right.
And I don't know, like it just seemed like people were more Kelantan people than they were Malaysian. Which I don't know. It's all like, I mean, maybe because it's a local thing.
That might be a question to ask a Malaysian.
Yeah. I mean, and it was also like, I think because Kelantan is the only one where I think it's ruled by imams, right? So it also has like stronger like religious connotations as well. But I don't know. Like it's so like. I mean, the borders don't really exist there, like because there would often come like Cambodian, not poachers of like wild stock, but poachers of
orchids.
What's
maybe
the incense tree called?
Shit, I forget the name.
It's a resin that you can get from a particular tree, which is I think it's usually sold off to China. It's not sandalwood or.
No, I was literally just about to say sandalwood, but no. Anyway. Yeah, there were poachers around, and like
but they don't seem to destroy the tree, and I don't know like how abundant that incense is, but for example, I came to like I was trekking like from our small camp, which was just like I built my own bamboo house there next to the waterfall, and the guy I stayed with, who was teaching me everything, he had his little house there, and that was about it. And then there would come like some youths from the village who were like didn't want to live in the village, and they would like hang out with us, and they built their camp, maybe, you know, stayed for 1 or 2 months, and then they would go back. And when I was like trekking around, I found like the remnants of like the Cambodians. I met them like a few months earlier, and I found one of their old camps. And I mean, they had left some of the incense there, so I don't think it was like super valuable, but like maybe they forgot it, or they were chased out because the army and like those
National Guard, park like rangers or something,
National Guard people, with like automatic weapons, would often come around, and they would ask me as well, like if I'd seen the Cambodians, and so there seemed to like be this great mix, you know, because they were sent by, I think, the state, right, like Kuala Lumpur. So there was like, you know, there's Kelantan, like, you know, people who consider themselves to belong to Kelantan but not Malaysia. There is like Malaysian state intervention, then there's the Orang Asli, and then there's like Cambodian incense hunters. So the jungle is like I don't know, like it's
a diverse place.
You know, just talking about like how you manage to escape, it seems to be like, you know, this place where a different set of rules abide.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I would definitely say the same thing about Zomia. Like, I mean, you heard my Golden Triangle series, and I kind of got into a bit in that. But I was just wondering about. There's just something that struck me when you said they left quite a lot of this wood behind, and just the sheer abundance, which also goes back to a lot of stuff you've discussed on your series, which is the one thing that is really most striking when you stay with the Maniq, and is also talked about, repeatedly referenced in this book, is they really never take more than what they need.
Yeah,
like they're
that's in right.
Yeah, because there's also this. Sorry, I should just to be specific. There's a chapter here about taro and how they harvest taro. I think you and I were talking about it before.
Okay.
And it was saying like they know exactly, and this is when I started to question whether the Maniq were actually gatherer hunters or whether they were somewhere between that and natural farmers, because the book talks about how they will cut the taro and take the taro that they need in such a way where they know it will grow back to become a more healthy plant than where they've left it. So they do some kind of like forest maintenance in that sense, which would essentially make them not hunter-gatherers but natural farmers, right?
Right. I thought the same thing like about the Orang Asli, that with cassava, for example, is really cool.
Yeah,
like,
I should have said cassava. I said taro, I meant cassava. Yeah, go on.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because cassava is incredible. Like, you basically just leave the the stem on top of the ground, and it will like shoot out roots from wherever,
little legs and just
yeah. It's so interesting. Like I really like. I was shocked when I saw that. That's like how you do it. I was like, this is like looks like a pile. But then they, you know, organized it in like neat sort of rows, and they were like, we'll come back here like in 2 months, and there will be like, you know, like it will start to grow here. And
did the neat row? Did it look a little something like that?
I would say so.
Wow, yeah. I'm just showing Marcus an illustration from the book of this cassava.
Like trenches.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So they've got the same method, but like it was. I don't think you're completely off with the taro either, because often like in the like ditches and like swamp or like where there's like running water from the waterfall, they would often like reintroduce water to these like ditches that would have gone dry, and then like just make sure that like the taro gets water again from like the waterfall. And that's like, I mean, that's natural farming like in a hydro sense, to just make sure that, you know, things doesn't get piled up, you know, because when there's like flash floods from the waterfall, things can get stuck, and like when you, of course, like it doesn't stuck up the main like river, because that one's going to be like, flowing with immense speed, but like these, shoot off like brooks and streams, they can like sort of be manipulated by like just natural influence, and they would just go there and like throw, and that was like all they had to do.
It's very,
and then
I was going to say,
in there,
not a lot of labor involved, and that's another thing when you mentioned about the picture that people kind of painted of pre-class society humans, or the picture that the kind of bourgeois painted of pre-class society humans is, desperate, struggling to survive and compete against the wild. Whereas what I've seen with my own eyes, and what you've seen with your own eyes, and what people live today is actually lives of not only great abundance, but of very, very, very little labor hours spent. Yeah.
I think, like, when I talked about that, like with the mountain, right? Like how they would store water inside the mountain, like the Caliphate in Spain.
Right, yeah, the kind
of
natural...
Like reintroduce...
The dams, kind of,
Yeah, it's not really dams.
I didn't feel comfortable using that word.
Yeah, it's like they would steer the natural outflow like of a mountain. Then, of course, as we know, water always finds its fastest way down to the ocean, right? But they would make sure that like the water stayed longer on the mountain and move it into like areas where it would like sort of return into the mountain. And so that they would like, remake the mountain almost to like a gigantic water tower. And I don't know, like if you like explore all of these like very effortless, ways of maintaining, the landscape cultivation. I mean, now we're almost touching upon like, that latest big hit of like Marx's theory with the automatic space communism. Right. But we just take away the space part, like, because nature has like, I don't know, like a lot of like automatic
it's already automated labor, for the most part, right?
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, have you gotten into him yet? The Japanese guy?
The degrowth communism, is that what you're going to say?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was a big eye-opener to me, because he's suggesting that like there's like a third epistemological break in like Marx's life, or a second, I guess. Althusser said it first, and then like he was the one who introduced this idea of like epistemological break, that there's like a young Marx who was like more, like a humanist and focusing on alienation, but didn't yet have like an ideological critique of capital, right? But he didn't yet have the science, right? Like, so he was maybe... He didn't have the historical materialism yet. He just had the sort of dialectical materialism. Or he didn't even have that. Actually, like, out of his epistemological break, those two things developed, like, which is the philosophy of dialectical materialism and the science of historical materialism. And I think Saito in the degrowth... like Marx in the Anthropocene, right, is the one I'm reading, but I know there is like one called Degrowth Manifesto, I think, and there's a few like ones that haven't been translated to English from Japanese. He suggests that there is a second epistemological break after, or even during the completion of Capital 1, Marx was already abandoning the idea of like the Prometheanism of capital. Like, that, socialism, that, the old story, like you need
the
like
step,
this very Trotskyite story
the
today.
Step process.
Yes. Exactly. That you need capitalism to enter into socialism, and that he was already exploring these ideas of indigenous communism, especially like, the Russian communes, and like, that, and flirting with this idea and starting to, investigate it if there were shortcuts to communism that didn't have to go through capitalism, which is especially because that all seems to come from Marx reading early 1800 books on agriculture and like robbery agriculture, and seeing how like there is actually like labor taking place in in nature, which actually, like, you know, the Promethean spirit sort of ruins them. Like it not only becomes not only like a pseudo activity, but many times, you know, our productivity might harm the productivity of
and
nature.
And it's a wasteful activity,
can it really be
quite
called,
often.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And then how can it be called then even productivity? I think like we are living in the age when we start to see this, like on the massive scale necessary to sort of really prove it. Because you have, like, you know, I mean, what would be small nations in Europe, like, you know, areas in India, for example, which is just like there's no soil left. Like there, nothing can grow there
we're living
anymore.
in the fallout of the Green Revolution and the British imperial agricultural policies that preceded it.
Yeah, right. And so then, and we have to sort of, I mean, because I don't know, like now it, like, it's devastating, of course, but it's the only way to almost show that, like, that it doesn't work, you know, because on the small time frame of like, you know, quarterly or annual growth estimation, it works according to the capital logic, because you add nitrogen and you get a bigger harvest. And it's like, how can you argue with that? And it's like, well, you can if you wait,
have to wait 40
you know, a generation
years,
or two. Yeah, and then maybe you'll have to wait you know, 100 or multiple hundreds of years, where if you had just taken one annual, you know, or quarter, you know, report away from your capital logic, you wouldn't have to have done that, you know. So even they can see that it's unproductive, but of course they won't, because it's always like, you know, it doesn't fit its logic. It's a different logic.
I mean, that kind of almost gets us into something which I went into in my Golden Triangle series, which was, well, what was Zomia before opium, or what was the Golden Triangle before opium? Because I think, just to be clear, the Golden Triangle, I guess most people know what that means. It's kind of the historically opium producing region, which makes up quite a large section of the Zomia area that we described earlier. And there was, well, as far as I understand it, there was little to no market per se prior to the introduction of opium as a cash crop. And the introduction of opium came via, well, how to say, the introduction of opium en masse came via the Kuomintang and their CIA backers in Washington, who basically forced market relations onto this formerly unconquerable kind of this, how to call it, mastiff, as you said, which was kind of the whole point of Zomia, right?
Massive,
which is it was a place for, supposedly it was a place for people to flee oppressive class-based societies to flee to, whereas, and the thing that finally was able to defeat that after, you know, however many thousands of years and however many thousands of grain states rising and falling was opium, which is interesting because that's exactly what the British were using to grow in India and used to devastate India, and China for that matter. But, you know, specifically in terms of just destroying the fertile agricultural areas of India and just agriculture, how to say, pushing agricultural big air quotes development as a kind of means of spreading the marketplace. And then in Zomia was such a fortress that it had to be opium was the only thing that could penetrate it, right?
I mean, also because of all the symbolic, like, I don't know, value also invested, like, by mythology, or like of European mythology into opium, you know, like with like Thanatos and Hypnos, like, I don't know, it's always suggested that it, like, there's something death-like about it, right? Like, it can both bring great, like, elevation or like relief of pain, but there is always, like, you know, Hypnos and Thanatos are brothers, right? Like, half brothers, like death and sleep. And I don't know, like, there is something, uncanny about like how it was opium that managed to get into this untouched fortress. I like, with India there, like, I don't know, the thing I remember the best, like from that series, is also like, you know, with the Promethean spirit, like, you know, oh, how is it then, you know, if it's so, you know, if the Promethean spirit is so like giving, how is it that, like, you know, all the greatest famines, like of the late Victorian Holocaust, you know, like, why did they take place around the railroads, you know? Like, wherever the railroad find its way, there the famine also find its way, like, you know, because it's a deceivious, you know, a wasteful spirit, like opium. You can't eat opium, man.
It's a cancerous.
You can't eat.
It's I mean, the British railroads were I mean, cancerous veins, so to speak. Yeah. And I think I talked about this. Did I? Fuck. Yeah, it was in my Counterinsurgency series when I was talking about logging and the spread of market relations into Siam. That was via logging. That was also the British, and that was via not railroads, but another thing that my kind of Anglo grandparents would be very proud of about Britain, which is canals. And it was that kind of, those kind of veins, like you can see market relations being formed by the spread of these canals, which was for logging, which is again a very like destructive practice for the environment, and for the lives of those people who live in the forest. Yeah,
and the canals is also deceivious because, I mean, you're always going to take water from somewhere else, right? Like, you're concentrating water at a specific place, and yes, you're going to have like greater growth over there, but, you know, then what was usually sort of the backup lands of, like, you know, famine food cultivation, well, there nothing will grow now, you know, because there's absolutely no water there. You've made sure that all water goes to this specific place, and what are you growing there? Like, you're growing, you know, hemp for textile, or you're growing opium for, you know, financing a war,
or indigo,
and all these, like, you know, non-edible crops. So but at the same time, it doesn't really have to be that way. That's what I talked about also, like in like before the Brits came to China, right? Like the last parts of the Qin dynasty before it collapsed seemed to have like great, you know, famine, like anti-famine
proofing,
like built into its state structure. So
and built into its physical structure as well. I mean, with the canals.
I don't know, like Yunnan isn't mentioned in like those old papers because Yunnan has always been sort of like, even in China, like horror stories, for example, in China, like I think like even Edgar Allan Poe's story, you know, of the monkey paw, you know, that is that Edgar Allan Poe, you know, that the monkey paw that like grants you a wish. But the Chinese version I read of the monkey paw story takes place in Yunnan, for example. Like that it grants a wish, right? But it does it in let's say like you wish for 100 pounds, and it's like, oh, you found it the next day. But then you also find out, because it was like the insurance, because your cousin died or something.
Yeah, you know? Something like this.
Yeah. So it always takes and gives.
Cursed Yunnan. Or maybe it's the other way around, right? Maybe Yunnan. That's why they make Yunnan seem like the cursed place, because it was like, I don't know, the kind of a place of refuge. You know, that's something which I noticed when I was reading. When you read a lot of the kind of, I would say, like, class-based society-backed myth, how to say, the myths that would come out of the grain states, let's say, to put it more simply. Often the forest and the mountains are seen as a place of, you know, great danger and a great threat and very inhospitable compared to like the safety of the grain state or of the city. Whereas actually like
it's the Sherwoods.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's, and it's a very common feature found among in Thai history. I mean, even a lot of Thai people today will be fucking shit scared of the forest because they think it's filled with ghosts and shit, malevolent ghosts, that is, right?
No, but it's a similar thing in China. Like most like the folklore. Like when you want folklore to get dark, the story usually takes place in Yunnan.
And Germans and Black Forest, and the Black Forest as well, of course.
That as well, yeah. And all like the creatures of folklore in Swedish folklore, they're usually creatures of the wood, right? Like one of the scariest one, I think, is like the skogsvrå, right? Which I think is an analogy of like venereal disease, because it's like a woman who's got like her back is a rotten tree trunk, but she looks really beautiful from the front. And so people who work in the forest, they want to sleep with her, but then they find out like that she's like a half rotten tree.
There's a Kachin one which is almost identical to that, and the woman turns around and she has no face.
Yeah. This one has a face, but like she's got no back.
Yeah.
Like, the back is a rotten tree. And that one scared the shit out of me when I was a kid. Like, that was so terrible.
It worked.
Yeah, it did work. I don't know, like, but now, I mean, is it really? I think what we're gonna find out, like, it's not only like the forest that provides, like, we shouldn't be like geographical fundamentalists, right? Like, there are also other ways of like escaping the grain skate, or avoiding the capture.
Well, that's hopefully what we're going to be able to talk about with our Indonesian friends when we manage to get them on record, which is the ocean, and which is actually what your series is called. And
it was so nice. It was so nice to like have that kind of indication, because that was much more the focus of my first season, and I wanted to be the focus of the third season. Like, you know, that if you want to look for the remnants of the escapees of the bronze civilizations, certainly you have to go to like the islands, and that seems to be the case also like in Europe. We have a lot of like interesting Heyerdahl talking about Bahrain and Malta and some islands in like the Mediterranean, where you do find like indications of also like them actually being the forerunners of the civilization. It's a sort of double function, like it's both a place of refuge and it's also like a source of a lot of like important knowledge, which they co-opt to create the first class societies. And I wonder, like, I really want to know more about these spice islands of Indonesia, because it's really like exciting me now that I'm getting into it. I was a bit suspicious initially, but now I'm more and more convinced by the authenticity and the like uniqueness and the importance of this phenomenon. So I hope this is I hope that will be a great experience. Too bad he's in prison.
Too bad he's in prison. But we're working on it, listeners. I mean, there is also the case, speaking of southern Thailand and northern Malaysia, of the Mokhen people, Chao Lei in Thai, that we talked about yesterday. Do you want to give that anecdote about the tsunami, or maybe I should just give a brief description first of who they are?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so they've got a really awful name in English, which is Sea Gypsies. Which is like, Jesus fucking Christ, can we? You know, like hill tribe, sea gypsies, like, fuck, can we stop doing this, right?
Gypsies is definitely a bad word, right? Like, I don't understand why in English it often comes across so often. Like in Swedish, it's really like nobody says it.
But do you have like a kind of nomadic? Well, yeah, you do, right? You have
I think we have more than what we have in England.
Well, sure. No, I mean we have the Irish travelers.
Yeah, that's true. Who often make roads in Sweden. They would come and like, they often came, like when I was young, it was very common that like if you had like a summer house on the countryside, they would often come and be like, do you want us to like asphalt your gravel road up to your house? And then sometimes they would do it good and sometimes they would do it less good. My dad's a landscaper and like petty bourgeois in his like racism, so for sure he would say, they don't do it that well.
They a group accidentally stole my dog when I was a really young boy living in the countryside in England, because we took our dog for a walk off, and we like took him off the lead, in the forest, and he'd just go. And we couldn't find him. We were looking everywhere, and he just didn't come back. And we lived very near the forest, like maybe 10-minute walk. And so we just went home. We waited a bit, and went back out to the forest to look for him again. And there was a traveler encampment in the forest. It was maybe like 7 or 8 caravans, and then our dog was just like tied up to one of the caravans. And it was like these really like gnarly guys just hanging around, and my dad's like, Jesus. And he like goes up to him, he's like, yeah, that's our dog. Could we I think could we be having back, please? And they were like, I don't want your fucking dog anyway. It's not a shit dog. I don't want you to take it out you want. And I'm allowed to do that, listeners. I'm half Irish. Anyway. But I mean, it wasn't a very good dog. He was very bitey. So luckily they didn't keep him. Anywho. Yeah.
Anyway, they're not sea gypsies.
They're not sea gypsies. Oh yeah, so the quote-unquote sea gypsies, I'll use the term Chaole in Thai maybe, which just means people of the water, which I think is quite nice. So they live on the Andaman coast of Thailand and Malaysia for the most part. And then I think there's also like these other related groups which are part of the kind of Indonesian Malayu kind of archipelago, right? To what extent they're related, I'm not sure, and it's something I wanted to ask our Indonesian friends. But certainly in Thailand and Malaysia border area, and some of the islands in southern Burma as well, I think they'll hitch up on. And they live, I mean, not at all dissimilarly to the Maniq, as we were talking earlier, just with boats. So I mean, just as you were saying, it's not just the forest, but of course it's the ocean, and that is still living and breathing today. And I would love to learn more about them. For sure,
I want to go to those islands.
I mean, we can go, man. You need to book a flight, and
But I kind of want to go and not come back as well. That usually what's my my I don't know, like when I was like a wandering monk, and then I often had that reoccurring feeling of just being like, let's just build a boat, let's just go away. But I think, I don't know, that is a pretty common trope also, in old I don't know, romanticism of the
intro
period,
of Moby
with
Dick,
Robinson
right?
Cruise. And Robinson Cruise, and there's always this I don't know, let's say it's not romanticism, but there's actually some built-in, latent, material inside us that is it's helping us to avoid the grain state capture. And for sure, going to a remote island is probably one of the most successful ways of doing that. Unless
or
you
just
have
getting on a
and
fucking boat and hitching a ride on whatever undersea current to take you as far away from that developing grain state as can be.
Yes, I think that must have been a part of it, for sure. And my anecdote about those people, if we really want to,
the Chaole,
so when there was the big tsunami, right, in Thailand, it was quite it became quite a big thing in Sweden, right, because I think it was the biggest mass death of Swedish people in modern history.
Right. Jeez.
Because we haven't had war for 200 years, right? So it was
so you were the real victims of that tsunami. It was the great people of Sweden.
I'm sure there were a lot more people dying in local people, but
I think it was the 20th anniversary last month, actually.
It was a lot of big things on the state channel TV. I was watching some of them, and it was it wouldn't have become such a big thing in Sweden, is what I'm saying. It wouldn't have been for, and then maybe I wouldn't have known about this story, because so apparently one elder there, he was talking about how in their oral tradition, there is indicative messaging about the dangers of tsunamis, and if you know how to read the story correctly, If you know how to read your mythology correctly, you can make use of it to tell when a tsunami is going to happen. Like there is actually like similar stories, like it's common held knowledge today, right, that you can't forecast earthquakes, for example.
Yeah.
But there are like old Roman texts of like people who knew, like you can tell signs in like the behavior of animals, for example.
Like birds,
lizards.
birds will move.
But it's like it's not really being investigated, so it's sort of lying in the same sort of category as, I don't know, maybe Chinese medicine is in the West, even though like in China it's like on a completely different level, you know, like they even used it quite successfully to deal with like COVID, like especially like symptomatic healing. This elder of the people of the sea, at least in this case, since they're spread out in many different places, I don't know how successful they were in other places, but this was a pretty isolated place, so it seemed like there was a very much unbroken chain of this passing on of the oral tradition, and they had all survived because like they knew that the tsunami was coming, and they had like moved their houses up higher up on the inland.
Yeah, like when the sea does there's some kind of messaging in the folk stories, which is when the sea does this, you need to put your boat on this side of the bay or something like that.
Yeah, and I thought that was so cool, you know, because it's really like a useful thing, you know. It's not only in this sort of religious perennial sense of being like, oh, everybody talking about a flood, like, so the Bible must be true, you know. It's like
right.
It's like it's a bit more functional and like, you know, methodological than that.
I can do something with that.
So
it's also, I don't know if I'm doing a good comparison here. You can tell me yes or no. Maybe I'll cut it. But when I was a kid in the countryside, my grandfather, who was a very like we call him yokel. Do you know that term?
Yokel.
Like a redneck. Yeah. He was like English term. Born and died in the same village in East England. And when I was a little boy, like me and my brother, he would tell us stuff like, oh, you know, like there's this flower, and if you dig it up by the roots, sometimes gold will attach itself to the roots. And you know, me and my brother would go out and we'd like dig up this plant, you know. He'd show us one, and we'd dig them all up in the garden. He'd go, did you find any? We'd be like, no, we didn't find any gold. And he'd be like, oh well, nice try, we can always do it next spring. And like, actually he's just getting us to do the weeding for him, right? It's like
interesting. Like, you know, when I was in the jungle, this is the opposite reason I think for this story. Some of the Orang Asli taught me how to go Tongkat Ali foraging. Do you know the herb Tongkat Ali?
No, I don't know. So, it sounds like quite a Malay name.
Tongkat means the stick of Ali, and Ali is the uncle of Muhammad the Prophet, right? I think, or is it his cousin?
He was due to be a successor, wasn't he?
Yeah, and isn't it like in either Shia or Sunni does have him as the successor, right?
I think Shia, yeah.
Yep. So like when you pick Tongkat Ali, so it's really interesting, right? Like, because there's another rainforest tree that looks exactly the same as it, but it doesn't have the root in the same way, and the root really looks like a stick. It like the plant can be like maybe a decimeter tall, and the root will go straight down, almost like a carrot or something, and it's like maybe 3 decimeters, when you pick it, you have to, they said, like you have to pick it like behind you have to face away from it and pick it like behind your legs. So you're like looking under your legs as you pick it, which makes it really complicated to pick it, and you're always like disorientating yourself, and so you always miss some of the Tongkat Ali whilst you do it, to make sure that you don't pick all of them in the same spot. And it's I don't know.
That's very cute.
Yeah, I don't know, and it's really popular. Like the thing was, like as soon as they told me that story, I didn't know it was such a valuable, you know, thing to be told what Tongkat Ali looked like in Malaysia and how to pick it and where to find it. because then all like the young dudes from the village would come up and like hang out with me, and I would ask my friend like, why they being so friendly now? And he was like, yeah, don't you know? And I was like, no. He's like, yeah, look what you've hung, you know, outside your house to dry. And I was like, they want the Tonkat Ali. He was like, yeah, of course. And now they know that you know about Tonkat Ali and where to get it, because it's like a really strong aphrodisiac, right? And it's like
oh, okay, you didn't mention that, right?
Yeah. And it's like 5 like Red Bulls in one, you know. I had like, you know, a few cups of that, and then I was building, you know, my bamboo house in a week, like just constantly working for like, you know, 9 hours a day. And it's like, yeah, you can't really do anything. Either work really hard, masturbate, or smoke cigarettes. Like, you have to do something. This like crazy plant. But yeah, similar, but like for opposite ends, I guess.
Yeah, that's interesting as well. Like we're going all over the place, and I guess we'll try and wrap up a bit soon.
Yeah, sure.
But like another interesting thing just reminded me from the Maniq book was this section about contraceptives, and how they've got. I mean, according to the book, anyway. I mean, you know, I can't speak to have experienced it, but they've got very effective contraceptives in herbal form. So apparently,
wow.
So says the book, which is very interesting. Like, it's a combination of herbs that the woman will take.
Yeah.
So she can dictate when she doesn't want to have a child.
It's they had a similar. There's like the polar opposite of Tonkat Ali. It's like Fatima's hand, maybe. It's a different shrub, and you usually take it after having given birth, and like sort of the vagina stretches back up again, so like you won't have like excessive bleeding, and but of course that works also like if you haven't had a child, so there's other reasons for people to take it as well, but like
get that fang tight. Yeah.
But that's what they told me anyway, and like and everybody like laughingly hinting at the fact that like there are other reasons too, but it's like I think
folks, the fountain of indigenous knowledge is
it's
or the well is deep, it's vast, and it's tight.
It is. It's everything you want it to be. You just have to know what you're looking for, and you have to identify your desires, I guess, to know what you want. Yes.
Precisely. So I guess, like, I don't know, just to vaguely kind of, or not vaguely, just to start to kind of wrap things up. I mean, I think we definitely can see evidence of what it was that I described in my intro of your work, so to speak. Certainly, we can see it everywhere, and we can even see it, as you know, we've alluded to, you know, stories of our own childhood in Europe, which has been the most thoroughly captured area on the planet in terms of class society. I think we could quite safely argue.
Yeah.
And if we can see evidence of it there, then I mean, it should come as no surprise that it is, just about still living and breathing in the far periphery, which is like, I don't know. There's something about your series, Early Communism and the Ocean, which I found incredibly optimistic, and so much of your work has been kind of exposing like the most dire and diabolical kind of aspects of like the building of these class societies and these apparatuses. But conversely, so much of it which you've explored and some of which we've touched on today, I've just found just so extremely optimistic, because, and I think you said it in the very intro to the very first episode, class society has lost before and it will lose again, and it still hasn't really won, I think we could maybe say. And there's kind of like a communal optimism to this series, which I really, really appreciated. I even talked to like my therapist about it when I was like going through like a severe depressive episode, because like I'm not a guy that listens to podcasts before I go to sleep, but like that just your series, that one I could listen to before I went to sleep, because it just put me in a really good space, just kind of listening to it and then kind of imagining being on some, I don't know, boat in the Pacific and somewhere in the middle of the Pacific and sighting land for the first time in a few weeks, and waking up to that news in that society, which I think we all, everyone probably listening to it would like to live in to some degree, in a communist society. So yeah,
I'm very happy that this the experience you had and the takeaway that you got from it, because the feelings are mutual, and I think it's that is like maybe the dialectical trick that we continuously expose ourselves to all this darkness because we want to know more and more about the enemy, and we almost get addicted to analyzing and defining capitalism all the time. But I don't know, like in a strange way, that also helps us to also see what, like, even though we don't have it around us, it makes it possible for us to see what a world without it would be like. And sometimes
we have just hints of it, right?
Yeah. And I think like sometimes that blossoms forth like in everyday life, even if we are not on those islands yet, because there are these like microcosms of, uncaptured territory as well, like around us. Like, you see weeds that are actually very beneficial in many ways. And then, they are outside the value structure of capital, or like, conversations with, people who you don't have a business relationship with, or reading books that aren't about, corporate economics. And we have all these, I think I said this on another podcast in Swedish just this weekend, that like, and my friend over there, he was talking about like dialectical judo, that we have to be like, try to use dialectical judo to realize that like alienation is maybe the way out of alienation, like when we really like see in what ways we are alienated, we can also see like in what way capital is alienated, the things that it doesn't understand, the things that it doesn't have an answer for. When capital is asking us, what the fuck are you doing? We're probably doing something really good, Like when that super ego injunction attacks us, that's like a blessing, because now like, oh, you're up to something that like it can't explain, which means that if it feels good and it, you enjoy it, and people around you also take delight in it, yes, then it's good stuff.
When you're blazing high off of Ali's stick in the Malaysian rainforest, building a hut to masturbate in.
Yes.
And everyone back in Sweden is saying, well, whatever happened to Marcus,
Yeah. And my angels start to look like Che Guevara, and then I know, like I'm in the right cathedral. Like it's the Yes.
All right. That's the communist optimism that I kind of want to leave it on in that case.
I think so. That's great. It was awesome lovely to talk to you, and hopefully we get to sit down in not too long and talk with our Indonesian friend, or who will become our Indonesian friend, I guess. Yeah.
And then hopefully, I don't know, I would love to extend it more and find more of these kind of islands, so to speak, and talk to the people who are actually from them.
Yes.
As well.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
And then let's take a trip.
Great. All right. Let's take a trip, man.
Yeah.
All right. Bye-bye, listeners. Kiss, kiss.
Bye-bye.